Hi there, I'm Chris from Evaluagent, and in this video, we're talking about what happens when your AutoQA program moves from setup into scale. If you've been following this series, then you've already built the foundations. You know how to structure an AutoQA program, design your scorecards, and create automated line items that actually work. So today, we're going further. We're not talking about setting things up anymore, we're talking about running them. And there's a word for that, orchestration. And it's genuinely different from setup. Setup's a one time act, but orchestration is ongoing. You need to keep a hand on the wheel, adjusting, monitoring, and making deliberate decisions as your program matures. This episode covers two things. The first is flow, how quality moves through your organization, the mechanics of work queues, the levers that shape them, and what happens when those levers are set badly. The second is trust, how automation becomes credible over time, why it breaks, what governance actually does, and how you maintain confidence in running a system at scale. So, flow and trust, they're not independent, one enables the other. Let's get into it. So, our main focus is auto work queues. And this isn't a tool that you just configure and forget. It's an operating system. It's one that defines the rhythm, pressure, and distribution of quality from across your organization. I mean, when did you last go into your auto work queue settings and actually change something? Now, for most teams, whatever was configured at setup is still running today exactly as it was left. And, that's not automatically a problem, but there's a difference between a system that runs and a system that operates. Now, a system that runs is executing its last instructions. That doesn't know that your agents have adapted, your customers are using different language, or your business priorities have shifted. It's just doing what it was told. And it's oblivious to the gap that's opening between those instructions and your current reality. A system that operates has a hand on the wheel. Someone's monitoring the output, noticing when things are drifting, and making intentional adjustments. And that's how QA work is evolving alongside technology. Now, the analogy that I would use here, if you think about a thermostat that you set in November, now it does a perfect job all winter. The heat kicks in, the house is comfortable, it's nice and cozy, exactly as programmed. Now, you fast forward to July. If you haven't touched those settings, then your house will be melting. Now, technically, it's executing its rules correctly. They're just no longer operating correctly for the environment that it's in. An auto QA program that was designed carefully and then left alone can end up in the same place. And that's what we're talking about today, not setting things up, but how to operate them deliberately. So let's talk about the four levers. A work queue is a design choice. And like all design choices, it's got consequences that can compound over time. There's four levers that define how a work queue behaves. The first one is your templates. That defines the structure. What type of evaluation, which scorecards, who gets evaluated, and the type of conversation. Your replenishment, that defines the rhythm, whether your queue is refreshed daily, weekly, or monthly. And then your quotas, they define the pressure. How many evaluations each evaluator is expected to complete per cycle. And then your share percentages, that defines fairness. If you have multiple evaluators, this is how the workload is distributed between them. Now, there's one part of the template lever, that first one, that I want to highlight because it's probably the most consequential choice inside a work queue setup. The scorecard that you attach to a queue determines how evaluations can be published. If you attach a manual or a blended scorecard, really one that contains any manual line items, then every evaluation in that queue must go to a human evaluator. They open it, they score the manual line items and validate the automated ones and then publish it themselves. The work queue that handles the assignment and the distribution, but humans own the publish step. If you attach a fully automated scorecard, one where every line item is automated, then something different becomes available. You get two options that don't appear otherwise. The first one is publishing without oversight. So Copilot, Evaluagent's automated publishing system, scores the evaluation and publishes the result directly to your reports. No human evaluator needs to open it. This is full end-to-end automation. Then option two, requiring human oversight. A percentage slider appears, so you set that to say 30%, and 30% of evaluations go to a human evaluator for review before they publish. The remaining 70% are auto-published by Copilot, and this is a stepped approach. And this is where most teams operate as they build confidence in their scoring. If your scorecard contains manual line items, Copilot can't run. Your automated line items, they are still scored, but you can't auto-publish. And that's not a problem. That might be exactly right for where your program is. But understanding the relationship between your scorecard design and your publishing capability is what lets you make that choice intentionally rather than by accident. Now, in terms of rhythm, the right quota for your work queues depends entirely on your context. But think about whether the quota that you're running today was designed intentionally or whether it was set up during that initial setup period and hasn't been revisited since. So if you think about weekly or monthly replenishment cycles, they have the potential to create batch pressure. Evaluators, they know the cycle, work accumulates, and then there's a sprint to clear it. And, that's not inherently wrong, but it means that for most of the week or the month, there's no active quality rhythm. Work waits. With daily replenishment, that creates a continuous rhythm. There's smaller volumes, there's more frequent engagement. So the quality program becomes part of the daily operating pattern rather than a weekly task. And, to be honest, neither is universally correct. The right choice depends on your volume, your team structure, and how you want quality to feel in your organization. The quota is essentially a statement about what you believe quality attention looks like. Now, your replenishment cycles and quotas only work if contacts are actually arriving in the queue, and that depends on how contacts get selected in the first place. So, this is where imported contact filters come in. These are the conversation filters that you can build and save in your imported contacts table. When you configure the contact types inside your work queue template and then choose imported contacts as your source, you attach a saved filter. And that filter is the contact pool for the queue. So if you think of it this way, the filter is the query and the auto work queue is the scheduled job that runs it. So every time the queue replenishes, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, it runs that filter and it takes the contacts that it finds and distributes them to evaluators according to their quota and their share percentage, or it publishes automatically. But the filter is what gives the queue something to work with. Now, that relationship has two operational implications that can potentially trip you up if you're not aware of them. The first one is that you can't delete a filter while it's attached to a queue. The platform locks the delete option until the filter has been removed from every queue that it references. And this is deliberate. It prevents a queue from losing its contact source mid-cycle, but it also means that before you consolidate or remove filters, you need to know which queues depend on them. Then secondly, editing a live filter changes the queue immediately. If you adjust a filter that's attached to an active queue, the next replenishment draws from the updated pool, not the original one. So the safe practice, duplicate the filter before you test a variation, work in that copy, and then swap it into the queue once you're confident that it's doing what you want it to do. There's one more dimension of replenishment. What happens to unfinished work when a cycle resets? So when your queue does replenish, there might be evaluations that are not complete or evaluations still in progress. The platform gives you three options for how to handle what's pending. First one, remove them all. It's a clean slate. Everything is cleared, pending, and in progress evaluations. The new cycle starts completely fresh. And this suits programs where carryover creates confusion rather than continuity. Second one, you can remove pending but retain in progress evaluations. So evaluations that are already underway where someone has actually started work, they're kept. And most teams land here. You're not dragging unstarted work forward, but you're not abandoning halfway finished evaluations either. You can also retain everything, nothing clears. Whatever wasn't done carries forward into the next cycle. And this sounds like a safe option, and sometimes it is, but it can also mask problems. For example, if backlogs keep building cycle after cycle, then potentially you've got a structural issue. And this setting means that you might not see it until the numbers are getting uncomfortable. So the right choice depends on your team and your cycle length. But the important thing is that it is a choice. It's not a default that you left in place at setup. Now, while we're on the mechanics of how Q manages incomplete work, there's another thing that's worth understanding. What happens to a work queue when it selects a conversation that's not suitable for evaluation? Well, evaluators can decline an evaluation, and when that happens, the evaluator selects a reason from a configurable list that you set up, and that slot is then freed up. The reason and the evaluator's name are recorded for reporting, and then the system immediately attempts to find a replacement. If it finds one, the slot refills. If it doesn't, that shell sits empty until the next replenishment cycle. And this is where filter scope directly affects queue fill rates. A filter that's too narrow, i.e., drawn from a limited contact pool, means the replacement search can potentially fail a lot more. You've also got the declines report, and that's accessible via the declines button on the work queue templates page. And this surfaces who declined what reason is selected, and over what time frame. This is a pattern surfacing tool. If a particular contact type keeps getting declined, your filter criteria might not be matching what's actually available in your data. If a specific evaluator is declining at a higher rate than others, that's worth understanding before it becomes a workload fairness problem. So, how do you keep an eye on whether all of this is working as designed? Well, the progress view, which is accessible via the progress button on the work queue templates page, that gives you a picture of how evaluation work is tracking. So, two things worth checking when you're reviewing queue health: templates with a lot of unfilled slots, and evaluators with a disproportionate number of pending evaluations. Either one of those is a signal that your design isn't quite matching operational reality. Now, another thing worth addressing is that a single conversation can carry multiple evaluations: compliance, coaching, CX, risk. These are different quality questions and they require different line items on your scorecard, but you don't need to bundle them all into the one scorecard. I mean, there's a difference in evaluation intent, and critically, there's different audiences for the results. So, this is where design choices have consequences that people might not see coming. Like, consider this: if you publish a compliance fail instantly, but hold coaching evaluations for review, then you've just designed two different trust experiences, intentionally or not. The agent who gets an instant compliance notification experiences quality as immediate accountability. The agent whose coaching feedback goes through human review before it reaches them experiences quality as something that's being considered before it arrives. Now, both are valid choices, but they are choices and they shape how quality feels to the people it affects. Automation scales fast, trust breaks just as fast, governance determines which one wins. So here's a frame that I genuinely find useful, not just for understanding where you are, but for making a deliberate decision about where you want to be. I think about AutoQA adoption across three levels. Level one, manual control, human driven evaluation. Now, automation might be in place, but publishing decisions sit with a person. Every evaluation is reviewed before it's visible. And this is where most teams start. And it's the right place to start because trust in the system is still being established. Then we've got level two, automation with oversight. So auto QA that's running and it's doing meaningful work, but there's still a human in the loop for publish decisions. And that's either a review sample or a hold for review process. Automation at this point has earned some trust, but oversight remains the safety net. Then we've got level three, risk rooted automation. Automation is handling volume at scale, but there are exceptions. Edge cases, low confidence evaluations, high risk evaluations, they're rooted for human attention. Oversight still exists, but it's targeted rather than universal. And most mature auto QA programs sit somewhere between level two and level three. Now, I want to spend a bit of time on something that shapes the long term success of an auto QA program more than almost anything else. How you build and maintain confidence in the accuracy of your line items once they're live. Now, this is not about going back into prompt design. What I'm talking about is what happens after a line item is built and running, and why the work doesn't stop there. Now, here's the thing about AutoQA, it does exactly what your prompts tell it to do, and that's its strength. But a prompt is a description of a quality standard written at a specific moment in time. And quality standards exist in the context of real agents, real customers, and real conversations, all of which evolve. So let's say you write a line item. Did the agent show empathy? You're capturing your best description of that standard today. 6 months from now, your agents might have adapted their language, new contact types might have come in, the types of conversations being handled might have shifted. That prompt is still scoring what it was told to score. The question is whether what it was told still accurately describes what you mean. So that's a signal for a prompt conversation. You review the wording, you update the line item, and scoring quality improves. The program has just got more accurate, and that's oversight working exactly as it should, surfacing a refinement opportunity before it becomes a data quality problem. So, what does that actually look like in practice? When an evaluator reviews a SmartScore generated line item and disagrees, they simply select a different answer. Now, the moment that they do, the platform surfaces a single mandatory field. Why are you changing this score? And you can't move past it without completing it. And that's the signal being captured. That explanation attached to the override is the data that makes your improvement loop operational rather than theoretical. Those overrides, each with a reason, flow directly into the SmartScore report, which is found under reporting. That gives you three headline numbers at the top: total line items smart scored, how many were changed by evaluators, and your accuracy rate. And the workflow that makes it work, an evaluator flags a misalignment, it lands in the under review section. And a manager reviews not each instance in isolation, but patterns across evaluators and time. If a particular line item keeps appearing in that queue with consistent reasons, then that's not evaluator disagreement. That's a prompt calibration signal. So back into the topic builder we go. We update the prompt and then accuracy rate improves. And that line item, that gets quieter in the SmartScore report. So oversight sampling is what lets you accelerate with confidence because you know that you'll catch those misalignments early before they compound. Now, in terms of where most teams can potentially get it wrong, there's a few patterns worth naming, things that can quietly undermine an otherwise well built program. So, auto publishing too early, before enough data exists to trust the scoring, before the line items have been tested enough across real conversation types. Now, the platform allows it, but that doesn't mean that it's time. You can also remove oversight too quickly. Once you turn it off, there's no early warning system. The cost of rebuilding trust after misalignment is identified is higher than the cost of just running the safety net for another month. Also, think about quotas being misaligned to actual conversation volume. The queue pressure doesn't quite match operational reality, so your evaluators are either overwhelmed or underwhelmed, and neither produces good quality work. And of course, treating automation is binary, either fully on or fully off, no blended middle state. And in practice, the most effective programs are the ones that run automation at volume and keep humans engaged in the places where their judgment genuinely adds value. So we've covered two movements today: flow, how quality moves through your organization, the rhythm, pressure, distribution, and structure of evaluation work, and trust, how automation becomes credible, governance, oversight, drift detection, and the published decisions that determine whether automation earns belief over time. And the decisions within these movements together point to a single question: am I running it deliberately? It's not, is it set up? It's not, is it running? But is it operating the way that I intend right now for the team and the program I actually have? That shift in question is the whole point. And now that quality flows deliberately and publishes intentionally, the next question is, what is it telling you? So in the next episode, we'll look at signals, what your AutoQA program surfaces when it's running well, and how to move from measuring quality to actually understanding what to do with it. So I'll see you there.